The campaign continues to heat up. Republican presidential candidate Herman Cain says, I want to make abortion illegal in America with a pro-life amendment to the Constitution.
Cain is defending his pro-life credentials after recent criticism from his Republican rivals. David Brody met with the candidates this weekend in Iowa.
In front of an evangelical crowd at the Iowa Faith and Freedom Coalition, Herman Cain came with a purpose.
I believe that abortion should be clearly stated and illegal across this country.
His clear stance follows an appearance last week on CNN, where Cain said that while he is personally 100% pro-life, the government shouldn't weigh in on the issue of abortion in cases of rape and incest.
It ultimately gets down to a choice that that family or that mother has to make. Not me as president, not some politician, not a bureaucrat.
Those comments put his GOP rivals on the attack.
I was an offensive coordinator on the life issue. I was trying to move the ball down the field.
It is a liberal canard to say, I am personally pro-life, but government should stay out of that decision. If that is your view, you are not pro-life.
Presidential candidate Michelle Bachmann told me she wasn't buying it either.
You can't say that on an interview and then switch on a dime 2 days later because it's not working politically.
But in an exclusive interview with CBN News, Cain tried to explain what he meant.
Tape that you're referring to, I said specifically, I am pro-life from conception, no abortions, no exceptions. But they only focused on a later part of it where they were trying to pigeonhole me with a specific situation. And so the lesson learned is beware of being pigeonholed.
Are you for some sort of pro-life amendment to the Constitution that in essence would trump Roe v. Wade?
Yes, yes. I feel that strongly about it. You know, if we can get the necessary support and it comes to my desk, I'll sign it.
While as president, he wouldn't have to sign off on a constitutional amendment. He would have the power to push for and sign pro-life policies.
I believe that the office of the presidency in the bully pulpit should be used for that.
Instead of criticizing Cain, Newt Gingrich, who was rising in the polls, gave a realistic picture of the challenge Cain faces.
And he's very likable, and right now I think, frankly, he may be psychologically the front runner, even past Romney at the moment. But what that does is it suddenly changes what the game is. The game isn't, gee, you're interesting. The game is, wow, you could be president. Well, the yardstick's a lot tougher for you could be president.
All these candidates are here for one reason: win the all-important evangelical support in the state that votes first. Voters are still mulling over their options.
This is the first time I've heard Herman Cain speak, and I really did get motivated about him. I haven't really made up my mind yet.
They all agree with everything I say, and it's very difficult for me to make a choice at this time. I don't have a real clear picture.
Sundays in Iowa are reserved for church, but Sundays in Iowa during campaign season mean that candidates take to the pulpit, like Michelle Bachmann here at Calvary Baptist Church.
Bachmann stayed away from politics, telling the congregation instead what happened after she accepted Jesus at the age of 16.
And so I said to the Lord, I don't know what's happened, but I do know this. I will radically abandon my life to you, Lord.
Speaking to church members is all part of the quest to capture hearts on the way to what these candidates hope will be the GOP nomination.
Thank you. Oh, it's good to see you.
David Brody, CBN News, in Des Moines, Iowa.
You know, I believe it was Lyndon Johnson that said, don't these people realize that if they push me over to an extreme position that I'll lose the election, and I'm the one who will be supporting what they want, but they're going to make it so I can't win. Those people in the Republican primary have got to lay off this stuff. They're forcing their leaders, the front runners, into positions that will mean they lose the general election. Now, whether this did it to Cain, I don't know, but nevertheless, you know, you'll appeal to the narrow base, and they'll applaud the daylights out of what you're saying, and then you hit the general election and they say no way, and then the Democrat, whoever it is going to just play these statements to the hilt. They've got to stop this. It's just so counterproductive.
Well, the one who seems to know that is Newt Gingrich.
Well, he's a pro. He's been at it forever. Exactly. You can't. You know, the old thing that President Reagan put in effect is you shall not speak ill of any fellow Republican. They haven't learned that lesson, and they continue to beat on. What have they gained? It's the so-called Pyrrhic or Pyrrhic victory. You win a battle and you lose the war.
Yeah. Well, if each one would simply focus on what they're offering to the American public, it would be refreshing.
But that doesn't go with me, and I think it's not enough, and it should broaden the statement. Oh, wow. Well, if they want to lose, this is the game for losers. And what do they say? They snatch defeat from the jaws of victory, whatever. But they're going to do everything they can to make sure they lose this election. Well, Lee Webb has the rest of our top stories in the CBN newsroom. Lee?
Pat, the U.S. could lose its AAA credit rating from another major rating agency. That prediction comes from Merrill Lynch. Failure by Congress to agree on a deficit reduction plan could signal a downgrade by either Moody's or Fitch. The 12-member Congressional Super Committee must reach a deal to cut $1.2 trillion by November 23rd. A top analyst for Moody's tells Reuters they're also looking at the outcome of next year's presidential election and expiring Bush-era tax cuts. A second downgrade would follow Standard & Poor's ratings drop 2 months ago, Pat.
Well, I think Moody's sees what we all see, this gridlock in Congress. It is highly, highly unlikely that super committee is going to come up with anything. They're gridlocked right now from what we gather. And it's going to mean automatic cuts, programs that they don't want to have cut, and or either that or they'll just change the game. But whatever it is, the rating agencies they're right. They're telling the people that there are problems in the United States that are hurting our credit rating. Lee?
Pat, tensions are brewing over the president's decision to withdraw all U.S. troops from Iraq. 39,000 troops remain in the country, and nearly all of them are scheduled to fly home by December 31st. But members of Iraq's parliament worry their absence will encourage neighboring countries to meddle in Iraqi affairs. Now some Republicans here in the U.S. warn a complete withdrawal of U.S. troops could destabilize the country and embolden U.S. enemies.
It's a serious mistake. I believe we could have negotiated an agreement, and I'm very, very concerned about increased Iranian influence in Iraq.
4,400 U.S. troops have died in the 8.5-year war. 32,000 have been wounded. Pat, I know you were against this war from the outset. Do you agree with the president's decision to bring them home early?
Well, we've spent so much treasure and precious lives of servicemen in that conflict. It would be a shame to fritter it away. But the truth is, we set up a government over there. The government supposedly is democratically elected, and the government has told the United States, we don't want you there anymore. So what we're saying is, okay, it's your call, we're leaving. And now some of them are beginning to say, well, that's a mistake. Well, I think probably McCain is right. We should have gone behind the scenes for some serious negotiating that maybe has not been done. But we essentially are acceding to the wishes of that so-called democratically elected government of Iraq. And what we are facing is a Shiite hegemony that will extend Iran, and it will extend through Syria, and it will extend through Lebanon, and it will extend to, to Iraq. So it's a very serious matter. And I don't know what the administration is doing in relation to these assassination attempts, but it's time we go after Iran and do everything we can to bring about regime change in that horrible nation. That's what's got to be done, and it can be done many, many subtle ways without having to go to war. Lee?
Pat, Libya's transitional leader says Sharia law will be the basis for the country's new government. Mustafa Abdul Jalil declared Libya a liberated nation Sunday, 3 days after the death of Muammar Gaddafi. Jalil called for Libyans to show patience and tolerance as the transitional government begins rebuilding Libya after an 8-month civil war. He says the basic source of all new legislation will be Sharia law. Jalil also announced the country's banking system will run according to Islamic principles. Sharia law will likely make it more difficult, though, for Christians in the new Libya. Well, the World Series is tied at 2 games apiece now. The Rangers won last night 4-0 at Arlington. Texas pitcher Derek Holland dominated a St. Louis lineup that scored 16 runs in Game 3. That was the game in which the Cardinals' Albert Pujols made history as only the third player in Major League history to ever hit 3 home runs in a World Series game. Reggie Jackson did it back in 1978. And last night, Pujols went 0 for 4, Pat.
Pujols is a Christian, and he, without question, is the best baseball player, I think, in America. He's, I guess, what is he, Cuban or something, whatever. Fantastic, but 3 home runs in one game in the World Series. Our hats off to Albert Pujols. But with all that, they lost the game. It's kind of a high you go on. It takes a few days to get over it, but they'd better get over it. They'll lose the series, but it's tied up. The World Series has been very exciting this year. 2 very fine teams, the Rangers and the Cardinals. They're battling it out, and it seems to have drawn a great deal of interest. Lee?
Now it's a best-of-3 series, Pat. Hundreds of people are confirmed dead after a powerful earthquake hit eastern Turkey Sunday. As Chris Mitchell reports, Operation Blessing is part of the international relief effort already underway.
Turkish rescuers were racing against the clock, searching for survivors on Monday. The earthquake, measuring 7.2 on the Richter scale, collapsed buildings in the region near the Iranian border.
There was a lot of shaking. I have relatives here, and I'm waiting for them. I pray to God they will come out alive and well.
Makeshift hospitals have been set up in the area to receive the wounded in this quake-prone region.
We went to all the hospitals, but haven't been able to find our friends. I pray to God our friends have survived.
Publicly, Turkey has declined international aid offers, but Operation Blessing and others already have relief on the way.
It's a moving target right now. We're desperate for information from the field. We've got a little bit, and we're anxious to learn more about the extent of the damage, the magnitude of the disaster. In the meantime, we're working with Humedica, which is a Christian NGO based in Germany that we work with around the world.
Operation Blessing International President Bill Horan says Humedica has a medical team that will be landing in the disaster area today.
Operation Blessing is involved in that project with financial support. David Darg, who is our Director of International Disaster Relief, is here with me in Israel on other business. David will be joining the Humedica team tomorrow, and we're just kind of in a wait-and-see mode right now.
Despite political differences between Israel and Turkey, the Jewish state quickly offered assistance. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said it's what neighbors should do for one another. Horan says Operation Blessing also hopes to work with an Israeli consortium of NGOs called IsraAid.
It's my understanding that IsraAid has been involved in search and rescue training specifically with the Turks for some years now.
Operation Blessing has partnered with IsraAid in the past in disasters in the Philippines, Haiti, Japan, and in South Sudan. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Pat, it's great to see Operation Blessing International so willing and able to help on such short notice.
It's so nice that we have such partnerships. IsraAid is one, and Humedica is another, and others that we have partnered with Operation Blessing. If you want to help in this Turkish relief, it's the Operation Blessing Disaster Relief Fund, CBN Center, Virginia Beach, Virginia, 23463. That's the address, so you can, of course, log on to Operation Blessing on the website and make contributions because it's very important. So it's just one more tragedy. This is right on the Iranian border, by the way, of Turkey. And,
yeah. You know, one of the problems in those countries always seems to be having the kind of equipment you need to remove and free people from the rubble. So pray for them.
Historic elections in Tunisia this weekend. Officials report that more than 90% of the country's registered voters cast a ballot. 80 political parties were on the ballot. Election officials say a moderate Islamist party is taking the early lead. And one Middle East expert says that's an indication that radical Muslims will not take over the country. 98% of Tunisia is Muslim. The candidates who win the election will write a new constitution. Protesters overthrew Tunisia's dictatorship earlier this year, and it was that uprising that sparked others across the Middle East and North Africa. Flooding in Pakistan is forcing entire villages to evacuate. In some areas, homes are under 4 to 5 feet of water. CBN is working with local ministry partners there to bring relief to families displaced by the flooding. Volunteers are delivering emergency food packs. The supplies will reach at least 500 families and can last 15 to 20 days. Children in the villages are also receiving care packages. Each one of those is full of chocolates, jellied candies, crayons, and coloring books. And you can find out more about what CBN is doing around the world by logging on to cbn.com/international.